let me tell you guys about the power of real estate. So I know I mentioned before that I had bought a 3-family house a few years ago, but how did I even get that? Especially in a high-priced area like New York City. It's very competitive. So, I just wanted to share with you my experience and how that happened. I had started taking Rich Dad classes years and years ago. So I was learning all about, different real estate strategies and things of that nature. One of the first modules that we learned there was just basic stuff about decreasing your expenses and increasing your income. At that time, I couldn't really increase my income, and so I was racking my brain about how to decrease my expenses. Living in New York City, as you know, is very expensive, the biggest cost being your rent. I was already living in an apartment. I just moved to my own studio apartment, which I loved, and I was so proud of myself because it's like, oh, you have a status symbol when you get to move on your own in your own apartment. It's basically like, oh, I'm grown now, I have my own place. At that same time, my landlord sent me a letter saying that they were raising our rent for $70. To me, I was already living paycheck to paycheck, and $70 was like, what? Are you serious? Like, I cannot pay an extra $70. Like, I'm barely saving any money as it is now. So I made the really hard decision to move out and find roommates where I wanted to only pay like $500 a month in rent for a room. I ended up finding something for $700, which is a little bit more, but I still drastically decreased my expenses. So I was able to start saving. Saving for what? I didn't know. I just knew I was supposed to. I knew that that's what I was taught. You're supposed to save money for a rainy day, some opportunity. If it comes along, if you're not prepared, then you just miss out on it. So I started saving. Fast forward years later, I had started looking for a condo to buy, actually, because I had got a first-time homeowners grant that I didn't end up using because it was very stringent, etc., etc. Long story. So I changed because technically I had always deep and down inside knew that I wanted to do multifamily, and I really didn't want the condo, but I was kind of being forced in that direction. So I decided, you know what, let me implement one of these other strategies I learned during my real estate training, and that was to send letters to all the owners of 3 and 4 family homes in the zip codes of the Bronx that I was looking at, and I just sent them a letter saying, oh, I'm interested in buying a home. I got a phone call from a few different people, and the house that I actually ended up buying was from one of those letters. So these kind of strategies. Now let me also say, I made every mistake under the sun buying that house. And it still worked out. But let me tell you, so I started by not having an inspection, which you're always supposed to do. And the thing is, I knew I was making these mistakes as I was making them, but I wanted it so badly, and it had been so long that I just was kind of turning a blind eye to it. Don't do that. Don't be like me. Do your research and buy these things correctly. So I didn't have an inspection. I didn't have a closing attorney, and I was about to move forward without one until my mortgage broker actually suggested one to me and kind of forced me into having one, which I'm so glad. Get a good mortgage broker. They're worth their weight in gold. Actually, the mortgage broker was referred to me by the seller. So I came to the table with basically nothing ready and nothing prepared on my own, but we ended up closing, and even at the closing table I could have renegotiated because some of the things that were told to me before by the seller ended up not being true or being changed without my knowledge before we closed, and I found out at the closing table. Again, I was so thirsty, I wanted to close and I wanted to get my building, and so I just went along with it. Long story short, that building, even though some of those mistakes I paid for like in a couple months after, and I did have a bad situation with a tenant I had to evict who wasn't paying for almost a year, I was able to still survive, and I was able to still thrive. And that building in the long haul is like a blessing, and is the biggest change in my life right now. So I've learned a lot of lessons. I was able to actually save and pay for my wedding because we were living for free. I was able to just use that income to still save and to have a better quality of life. I was able to afford, when we had our first daughter, that it wasn't a strain on us financially because we weren't paying mortgage or rent because I ran the numbers correctly. So even with mistakes, you can still do well in real estate. Even like I still highly suggest that you do what you can. Make sure that you're doing everything correctly. Don't make the mistakes I just told you that I made. And another thing, like 4 years later, I had so much appreciation because of the Bronx. Like, I had a lot of equity in the house I was able to tap into and use that equity for other investments to further myself even more. So now, like, my net worth is no longer negative because of student loans and all of that. And I also am able to start repositioning the wealth for myself and for my family. So all of that to say, just I made a lot of mistakes, but I studied, I did the research, I ran my numbers correctly, I had a goal, and the biggest thing you need in real estate is thick skin and resilience.